As I was saying downstairs and said to my mom and wrote on a piece of paper, it's 10:59, May 12th. But yeah, so if this isn't raise a red flag for you, you know how often when people are involved with property disputes and data theft, uh, why are they resorting to creating militias, blackmail, and bearing arms and using weapons? Yeah, property, money, data. Typically, if someone's stealing your data or your property, you sue them. So why are people bearing arms and trying to blackmail people and creating militias to fight a war? You know, if someone stole your property and it's really yours, why don't you just sue them? Why would you be raising weapons? And then why would you be trying to handle things covertly? Why would you just sue them and get it over with? My theory is the reason these guys are all resorting to weapons is because none of them have a foot to stand on, and and words don't work because their words would reveal their cause is unjust and they have no right to this property. So because they didn't have right to this property, words failed them, and so then they resorted to weapons and blackmail and hand tying and raising militias and other illegal means to try to resolve their conflict. But what I'm gathering is they had no foot to stand on. It was never their property. It was never their data. They were never their ideas. They're my ideas. Not to mention, if people are stealing your property, committing aggravated assault and robbery on you, using WMDs on you, typically write to law enforcement about that. You don't raise a militia and then start, bearing arms. You write to law enforcement and report it. If someone's stealing your property, you write to law enforcement and report it. So if this doesn't raise a red flag for many things, I don't know what to say, but it's very odd that if people are stealing these people's data, property, committing copyright infringement, etc., they're not writing to real law enforcement and instead trying to settle it covertly under the government radar, as well as all of them are manufacturing weapons for a war to settle a dispute. My theory is they're keeping it off the government's radar because it's none of their data, none of their property, and they are controlling information to cover up it's none of their data or property, and then they're trying to fight a war between one another who know the truth for property and money that was never theirs. So they're really just criminals in a dispute over some loot, basically, that's not theirs. That's what I'm gathering from what I gather over 6 years and 6 months is really mine. I just never seen this game, don't know where to acquire this loot, don't even know where the loot is. One thing I do know is there's people always stealing my data and ideas and assaulting me for them, and they're stealing it via telepathy, and they're using neurophysiological weapons demanding ideas and data. They assault me when I report this to law enforcement. So there's a reason they're keeping it off the government radar. There's a reason they're bearing arms, and there's a reason they're not suing. My theory is because it's none of their property, it's not their life, it's not their money. And there's different communities who know about this, and because it's none of their property, not their life, not their music, raps, ideas, data, etc., this technology I guess I was supposed to get that I never even saw, they're resorting to weapons, and that's how they're trying to resolve this dispute because when they use words, it doesn't serve their agendas because they have no foot to stand on, so words fail them. So they resorted to weapons. That's the vibe I'm getting. So I ponder that thoroughly and explore that because that's an odd way to resolve data theft, property theft, IP theft, conflicts, copyright infringement, etc. Typically, you don't start building satellite weapons and WMDs and neurophysiological weapons and going to war. You typically sue people. So why are they trying to keep, and you typically bring it to the government's attention and law enforcement's attention. You don't keep it under the radar. So that should raise huge red flags. Someone should look into it. Praise Jesus. But I know what data is mine and things I send to the president, things I send to Kamala Harris, things I send to the Intellectual Property Rights Commission, the UN. Those are my ideas, my data. So some of their wars are involving that. That should tell you. That's like an indirect admission of guilt, even potentially. Because, someone whose property it really is would just write to law enforcement. They wouldn't start making satellite WMDs and going to war. They'd report it and get it handled legally. Because, it's about money. Let's think about money. Businessmen. Liability. If someone's stealing property from you, what are you going to do? You're going to risk it all and start becoming a terrorist and making WMDs and getting involved in a RICO and potentially getting your assets freezed and seized, or you're going to write to law enforcement and let them handle it and then sue. Because it doesn't seem like a good business strategy either, trying to chase down your property by creating a war so that you may get your assets freezed and seized or thrown in prison. Because part of this dispute is about money. And if you're a businessman, why would you want to, what sounds like a better business approach? Getting involved in terrorism and RICO for your own money and property, or reporting to law enforcement and suing. Sounds like a lot of liability, becoming a terrorist and getting involved in RICO to fight a war for your own property when people stealing your property is illegal. So why wouldn't you just report it? So that's a big red flag.